Hello everybody, my name is Dratnus, and in today's video we're going to talk about overlays, which are the next weapon in the arms race between competing Race to World First guilds and each other, and also between like the players and the devs in the big arms race we've been seeing. So what is an overlay and how does it work? So we've seen recently Warcraft Logs has come up with effectively a damage meter that's going to correctly attribute as much damage as the Warcraft logs correctly attribute to Augmentation Evokers through an overlay, which can be run either on your main screen or if you have multiple monitors on a second monitor. And it does this by scraping the combat log file that your game can record if you're logging. And creating this not in real time, but every time that combat log gets updated. Now, there is some delay attached to that combat log update, but apparently it's based off of the number of like events rather than based off of a flat amount of time, which means that in these modern mythic progression environments, there's so many events happening so frequently that this delay is often about a third of a second, which is a short enough period of time that this can be useful for keeping close to a real-time combat log. Now, this sparked further evolution here, and Urkra here created this thread on the competitive WoW Reddit, sent me a bunch of information about this as well, which is basically you can use this for much more than just a combat log. You can use this for something like the Volcanic Heart on Echo of Neltharion. That is a mechanic that is a private aura, which means that in-game weak auras can't tell whether you have it or not. The best we can do with in-game weak auras is something like creating a list that's basically just a raid frame and showing people's private auras next to them and then counting down manually on that list. Or a weak aura that relies on people hitting a macro if they get the mechanic to then have the weak aura know that they have the mechanic, right? So again, that's a mechanic where you want to assign some number of volcanic hearts go out. In Mythic, it's 5, and you want to assign them positions 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5, right? And there's not a good way for weak auras to do that. All of the ways are a little bit convoluted. But with this outside auras tech, you can see what this looks like in this demonstration here. So the volcanic hearts come out now, and 261 milliseconds later, so bit more than a quarter of a second later, they are assigned a 1 and a 2. And this is actually an overlay. And you could have this on another screen as well. You could have an overlay like this even operating off of your WoW screen, right? This isn't an in-game add-on. This is an external program that is looking at that combat log file that is being updated every 200 to 500 milliseconds by the game. And that file includes such information as who's got Volcanic Heart, right? Because if you look on Warcraft logs, basically any information you can see in a Warcraft logs file, you could make an overlay in theory that gave you real-time information about. Now, what else does this mean? Well, this has some really huge implications for a lot of mechanics because it's got position-based information in it as well. You could, in theory, have a, less than half a second delayed map of where the boss is, where everybody in the raid is, and you could do this with Volcanic Hearts. You could have a better version of the map that shows people where to go with Volcanic Hearts. You could have a better version of the P3 dealing with the portals on Echo of Neltharion. You could assign players to rifts on a fight like Kazara was an example that Urkra gave me if that fight was harder. But basically on any fight that had relevant positional assignment or knowledge information that you might need based on where people are and based on where anything that Warcraft logs, basically anything that the Warcraft logs replay tool can show is something that you could show with this as well, right? So if you look at this replay with like half a second delay, you could have basically this sort of thing, and you could have it doing logic on this, right? You see how it knows where the Dread Rifts are, and it could see each of the people that are targeted, and it could assign each person to go to minimize total distance traveled, or you could have it work so that healers have to walk further and DPS don't have to walk as much, right? You could design a mechanic solving algorithm that would work on that. And then you could have this as effectively a weak aura, except it's not running in game. It could be on your main screen. It could be there for your raiders, or you could have it on a second screen even as well and free up space on a main screen because, again, this wouldn't be something that is running in game. So that is currently the sort of the state of the tech that is now being sort of realized as possible. To my knowledge, nobody has yet been using this in a Mythic Progression setting, but I suspect that if this goes unchanged into next tier, people will. There's a few different responses I've seen in such places as the comments to this thread about how Blizzard should simply ban this, which it's not as simple as banning it, but I think that the best idea is that on Blizzard's end, they should make this not possible, which probably involves increasing the delay of the writes to the combat log file. Which means that stuff like, I don't know if you guys know this, but with Warcraft logs, you can actually get like real-time logs that you can look at mid-pull. That functionality is kind of cool, but not especially important or useful. So I don't think we would lose too much if combat logs were 10 or 30 seconds delayed. And if they were that delayed, it would be impossible to use this effectively, right? Almost all of this functionality is predicated on it being such a quick delay. And if there was just a baked in, even a couple of seconds, and this would stop being super useful, right? Like getting an automatic assignment of Volcanic Hearts, that's probably useful if it happens within 2 seconds. Anything slower than that, you're probably worse off than doing it with another method. So that's probably the easiest way for Blizzard to fix this. I don't think the right way is to try and ban like players who use this or try and make it not allowed, because I think this is going to be hard to detect. And I don't think you want to incentivize people to just get good at hiding it. I think you want to actually just make it impossible for stuff like this to work. The bad solution to this would be to be like, okay, we're just going to stop having who gets Volcanic Heart shown in the combat log, because there still would be a lot of value in just creating various overlay weak auras, or various overlay things that are like weak auras with this sort of delay. I think that's the big thing that sort of wasn't really well understood, was that the delay was so short actually these days that you could get a lot of good functionality out of it. So hopefully they don't answer by just going with giga private auras that just bypass going into the combat log entirely, because that would also make the process of analyzing the pull afterwards through Warcraft logs worse, and I don't think anybody wants that. But I do think that they should be looking to restrict this, yeah. And this is something where if this doesn't work, then that would be pretty bad. There's an edit here that they've added that says, I see a lot of people suggesting a 10-second delay, which I did just do here. I don't think this would be enough, since in theory, if the overlay was being run by all 20 raiders, we could probably still get the delay down to 0.5 to 0.7 seconds, depending on the distribution of rights. So it should be at least 30 seconds. That actually makes sense, right? Because if you had a 10-second delay, but you had everybody start their own overlay client, you know, spaced out a little bit, and then they were all updating kind of in a staggered fashion across the raid. So yeah, maybe a longer delay would probably make more sense. There are probably some other clever ways you could do this as well. Like that, you could just make it so that the right doesn't finish until the combat ends. It could be in some way being written in an encrypted fashion, and the key doesn't get generated or get given out until the combat actually ends. So there are a lot of, at least theoretical, ways that Blizzard could fix this, but I don't know anything on how the back end of it actually would work for them. So this might be a little bit of a nuisance for them to solve, given the way that combat logging works. But I do think it's worth doing, because otherwise I think going into next tier, this is going to be a huge escalation of the arms race. Again, not just between top Race to World First guilds against each other, but in terms of just like what this is going to be something that the average guilds then below will start to use as well. Because these are going to be, it's just a huge increase in power level to get Volcanic Hearts assigned, rather than getting them having to press a macro or having to look down a list, right? And it's an even bigger increase with the theoretical applications of this, with maps and stuff, and, you know, giving you basically GPS to wherever you should go in the room, assigning stuff like Rifts on Kazara. So that is the newest thing that has been discovered, and the newest development in the scene here. It's I'm glad that it's being talked about. It's good that this, like, the reason I think that it's good to make a video about this and make a post about this and everything is I think that publicizing this information is good. Maybe in an ideal world nobody would know about it, but given there are a few people who know about it, now everybody should know about it so that they fix it, rather than us kind of just keeping it under the surface, and then a couple of guilds start using it and try and keep it a secret to keep their advantage, right? Like that would be not what we want. Anyways, hope this video was interesting. Hope that anybody watching this from Blizzard Entertainment starts a thread of, all right, we gotta go fix this, because I think you gotta go fix this. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye.